Everyone seems convinced Mercedes has the same feeling they had back in 2013. But Toto Wolff just said the opposite. It's not comparable. And that changes everything about how we should read the winter and the opening races of 2026. Here's why it matters. In 2014, the team that had the right feeling won almost everything. Now, with rules that shake up the power unit, the battery, active aerodynamics, and even the overall car package, that feeling is basically invisible. Whoever controls the narrative can shape the race before the checkered flag even falls. At the end of 2025, Wolff was clear. It's super difficult to predict where the rivals are in their preparation. He also said Mercedes is on track with their internal targets, but then questioned whether those targets were ambitious enough or even set in the right areas. In plain English, the team does not have that gut instinct they had in 2013 that pointed to domination. And his statement has two layers, a technical confession and a strategic move. Let's break down both, and I'll show you what really matters in Barcelona testing and in the first races. Back in 2013 and 2014 there were three classic signals that usually revealed who was coming in strong. Today, those signals are fogged over. They were: first, the dyno and confidence in the power unit. Second, the correlation between wind tunnel, CFD, and on-track behavior. Third, the integration between chassis and power unit, meaning packaging, cooling, and weight distribution. In 2014, if you fired up the dyno and saw clean, strong numbers, you basically had half the championship in your pocket. So why is that not enough anymore? First, the engine is no longer the only main actor. The target of 50-50 between internal combustion and electric power turns the power unit into a hybrid system where the battery, the inverters, the energy management, and the software matter just as much as the ICE. Measuring motor torque alone on the dyno is like judging a smartphone only by its processor, without looking at the battery, the operating system, or how it connects to the network. An isolated dyno number says very little about performance over a full lap where harvesting, storage, and deployment of energy all compete with thermal efficiency. Second signal, aero correlation. In the past, if your wind tunnel and CFD matched what the car did on track, you had predictability. In 2026, we get moving aerodynamic surfaces controlled by electronic systems, front and rear wings that respond to airflow, temperature, and control maps. That adds a dynamic layer that depends more on software and calibration than on pure physical shape. Traditional wind tunnel and CFD tools struggled to replicate that active behavior in all conditions. The result is that a pressure map that looked perfect in the lab can act very differently when the wing is alive, out on track. Third, packaging. Smaller chassis, tighter bodywork, and more reliance on external suppliers for batteries and control systems all increase how sensitive the car is to small integration details. Cooling issues, vibration, or electrical coupling problems only show up on race-spec test benches or on track. And once they appear, fixing them can require changes that the budget cap and homologation windows simply don't allow at high speed. All of this creates one effect. The signals that used to clearly point to a favorite now produce noise. And that's where the psychological and social side of Wolff's comments comes in. There are two main ways to read his public caution. Reading number 1, honest and conservative. Mercedes genuinely does not have that 2013 feeling. The paddock is more competitive, manufacturers have invested more, and the new technical elements make early readings less reliable. If that's the case, 2026 is an open window for a power reshuffle. Shocks in the first races are totally plausible, and teams that nail energy management software and active aero integration can grab an unexpected advantage. Reading number 2, strategic. Wolff is managing expectations and throwing a smokescreen. By openly admitting uncertainty, he eases the pressure on his own team and forces rivals to show their hand first. If a competitor loudly boasts confidence with early reveals, they might just be trying to project strength. And if that rival is nervous, they can end up making very expensive mistakes. Staying quiet is often a very effective defensive tool. So, what are we actually going to see in testing that will tell us who is closer to the truth? Keep this checklist. These are the useful things to watch for, the ones that almost no headline will talk about. First, consistency in long runs rather than just single lap pace. With active aero and complex energy management, race pace and thermal degradation will tell you far more than one clean glory lap. Second, patterns of energy use and recovery. Pay attention to how and when teams deploy hybrid boost, by sectors, over a full lap, and across long stints. Third, battery temperatures and cooling behavior. If a team seems to run with stable thermal efficiency, that's a sign of advanced power unit and chassis integration. Fourth, how the active wings behave in high-speed corners and at the start of the straights. Small software tweaks can generate big gains, but also expose very obvious problems. Fifth, reliability troubles. Any team suffering fires, power loss, or electrical failures in test runs will probably have to show their weaknesses before we even get to the races. Once you start looking at these things, you can separate the noise from the real read, and that completely changes how teams communicate. Red Bull, for example, scheduled a public event for January 15, an aggressive show of confidence. Mercedes is keeping a low profile. These are very different approaches, each with costs and benefits. Showing strength early can intimidate rivals and attract media attention. Staying in stealth mode avoids exposure and buys time to correct issues without paying a public relations price. Let's get practical with 3 scenarios and what each one would mean. Scenario A: Mercedes is genuinely ahead but staying silent. If that's the truth, keeping quiet until the right moment is an advantage. They can tidy up details after the launch, hide integration solutions, and roll out a sophisticated, already mature package. The risk? If another team comes out swinging and starts the season in dominant form, the narrative quickly turns against Mercedes and the internal pressure explodes. Scenario B: Mercedes is not as far ahead as they think, and they're being quiet out of caution. In this case, Wolff's statement is fundamentally sincere. The team needs time, and the opening races could be rough. Here, the cost is reputation. Sponsors and fans expect performance, so Mercedes will have to manage expectations without looking like they misread the strategic plan. Scenario C: Wolff is deliberately misleading everyone. He lowers expectations to give himself room to maneuver and to push rivals into spending resources on premature countermeasures. If it works, other teams might rush to show confidence and end up exposing their weaknesses too early. It's a chess move, expensive in communication effort, but with serious tactical upside. Which of these scenarios is most likely? It's hard to say right now, and that is exactly the point. The 2026 transition blurs the line between pure engineering and information warfare. And there is another element that makes everything more unstable: how the rules are interpreted and the legal battles that could follow. Loopholes in hybrid systems or active aero will trigger protests. If someone finds an easy gain, expect challenges and demands for technical clarifications. That can slow development cycles and turn part of the championship into legal fights, adding yet another layer of uncertainty that Wolff clearly has no interest in predicting. So, what should you, as a viewer, keep in mind through the winter and those first races? 3 practical checkpoints. First, don't trust garage photos or single hot laps alone. Look for consistent long runs and clear patterns in energy use. Second, keep an eye on thermal failures. Poorly integrated electrical systems usually first show up as overheating or sudden performance drop-off. Third, treat public posture as part of the strategy. Glitzy car launches can be genuine confidence or pure theater. Now, a bit of forecasting. Barcelona, from January 26th to 30th, and the period immediately before the first Grand Prix, will be our first judgment window. Don't expect final answers, expect signals. If a team shows strong long-run pace without reliability surprises, that's a very serious clue. If a lot of teams are struggling with electrical problems, get ready for a championship that turns into a season-long race to correct course. Back to Wolff's line: it's not comparable to 2013. He's not just reminiscing about a happy past. He's telling us the board has changed, and in this new game, secrecy, software, and integration are worth as much as raw engine power. What was obvious in 2013 has become opaque in 2026. That turns the start of the next cycle into a discovery season, where the early results will shape narratives, contracts, and even factory-level decisions. Mercedes has already warned us they don't have that 2013 feeling. That might be humility, tactical caution, or outright misdirection. What really matters is that the signals that once pointed clearly to a favorite are far less reliable now, which is exactly why winter testing and the first races will be far more valuable than isolated numbers. Barcelona and the opening Grand Prix will give us the first real snapshot of the new power map. Want to see how I read the tests using these criteria? Want a lap-by-lap breakdown from Barcelona once the times start coming in? Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. After testing, I'll be back with an episode that strips down who is genuinely fast, and who is just putting on a show. And tell me in the comments, are you betting on Mercedes making stealth mode work? Or do you think the big surprise will come from the team that dominated from 2022 to 2025?